Hey, it's Phil coming at you, man. Yeah, thanks for hanging out again. I'm definitely appreciating you. Yeah, we're getting into some interesting stuff now as well. We're going to work on the front Planetary. Man, these things are always out of spec. They're so freaking loose. Anyway, I'll show you how to check it, what the spec's supposed to be, and more importantly, how to get it back into spec. Not too hard, actually. Also, these things, the lubrication right on the ring gear that sits on top of it, there's a bushing inside. That's a common failure point. I'm going to show you how to modify the front Planetary so that that bushing isn't going to fail on you in the future. Increase that lube, man. It's a good thing for sure. Hey, we'll also set up the rear section end play. A lot of people do this inside the transmission, and that's a royal pain in the buttocks. There's a much easier way to do it. And actually, even that, some people are doing it incorrectly. There's a super easy way. So you could slide in on the side looking at your tolerances. Again, it sounds basic and easy, but it's a little tricky. I'll show you how to do it. I'll also show you what happens when that end play doesn't sit just right? How we actually go about fixing it, what we can use, where we can get shims from, hint, hint. Anyway, it's good stuff. It's a little bit longer than usual, but hey, hang out, look over my shoulder, man, and yeah, follow along for sure. Let's go ahead and inspect our front ring gear. This part right here where the teeth are, this is where your forward drum, of course, is going to ride on the inside. So you want to make sure that these teeth are nice. There's nothing broken, nothing too beat up. And of course the inside, our front planet's going to ride in here. So again, make sure all your teeth are in good shape. Make sure there's no scratches, deep ones. Once you pass inspection there, next thing we're going to want to do is remove this bushing, and I'll show you how to do that right now. Before removing the bushing, make sure to get your copper washer out of there. Again, that takes a beating, so obviously we want to replace that, and we'll do so later. What we want to do is hit our bushing out in either direction. The important thing is when we put it back in to make sure that it is flush. If you look at your new bushing, you'll see a number 43 bushing removal tool. Fits on there just so. So the easiest way, take your number 43, put it on there, and press it through. Again, that's coming out of our eBay purchased bushing removal tools. Again, here's the kit of bushing and bearing removal tools. Again, comes with a handle. It's about $50, give or take, on Amazon or eBay. Just search for bushing removal tool, and you'll see a whole bunch of them there. Mounted on the small press. I've got the number 43 there. Again, just pushing the bushing through. And that's going to be our next step. Let's go ahead and push that down. Make sure she's lined up. And it's not going to take much force to remove this. There she goes. To mount your back in, I like to use something on the inside. In this case, I'm just using a number 40. And something much larger on the outside. Here I'm using a 48. And again, that's going to give us good pressure. Again, you want it larger on the outside. This way it goes in much easier. Assemble the tool. Little shaft goes on the inside. And of course, our screw mounts in there. So we've created a bushing tool. I want to go ahead and lube up that hole. And of course the bushing itself. Just dunk them in some transmission fluid. Go ahead and get her nice and centered on there. Take our tool, press her in there. Bring your press down. Of course, make sure she's nice and centered. Go ahead and drive her home. Once you get her pressed in, move her out. And verify, of course, that she's nice and flush. Double check the bushing that we installed has no burrs. Lube it up and go ahead and take your front planetary, also lube up the bushing surface, and just make sure that she fits in there, and of course rotates nice and smooth, since that is what's riding on the bushing. Working with the front planetary, another nice modification that we should consider doing is this hole right here. This is used to lubricate the bushing in the ring gear, right? The bushing that's down in there. You can see when this is put together, our bushing rides against that surface, and that's where it's getting the oil from, so that it's lubricating, right? So it's being shot out of that little tiny hole. So that's a common failure point, is that bushing wears down over time. So it's a good idea to drill out this hole and make it bigger so that we're getting some more oil flowing through there. The existing hole is about 64 thousandths diameter, so what I like to do is double that size, so step up to about 128 thousandths, which is a 1/8 inch drill bit. So go ahead and widen it up. So we've got it mounted up in our drill press. I'm going to start drilling with a 3/32 bit, so about a 93 thousandths. Again, you want to sneak up to the 128 or 1/8 of an inch size. You don't want to go hog wild in there directly. By the way, recently got this drill key chuck, or whatever you want to say, I use for my drill press. Instead of having the basic one, again, an impulse buy, but it's a really cool tool. Highly recommended. It's only like $5, kind of a ratcheting action. But side note, let's drill it. Of course, you never want to drill dry. I like to use Tap Magic, but again, even just some oil, just putting it on there is perfectly fine. We'll switch out to the 1/8 of an inch bit. Go ahead and finish that hole. Once we get our hole drilled, you want to make sure that you clean up the bushing surface also. Just a green Scotch pad is fine, with some transmission fluid onto it. Again, never do things dry. And just go ahead and hit the bushing surface, making sure there's no burrs, anything like that that's going to scratch our bushing. Give it a good clean off. And on the inside as well. So you want to make sure that that surface, there's no metal sticking through somewhere we just drilled. So what I like to use is just a needle file, Harbor Freight, $5, whatever. Just get in there, and again, take off any burrs that might be left, making sure that we're creating a nice smooth surface so that the shaft can fit right through it. And we should be good to go. Next up, let's go ahead and examine our forward planet. Remove your bearings on the top and the bottom, of course. What you want to do is inspect the bushing riding surface. This one looks pretty good. Just needs to be cleaned up. Same thing on your inside. Make sure she's good. Want to check your pinions. Double check the teeth for wear. Make sure there's no chipped, cracks, etc. This one looks good. Next, what you want to do is check the wear pattern here, like we did previously with our rear planet. This one also seems pretty loose. See if you can hear that. A lot of play. This one in particular. The play should be no more than 24 is a safe number. Unfortunately, these all came loose from the factory. And let's do a quick measurement, but I don't think we're going to be in spec. Just going to take a 25 feeler gauge. Check real quick our tolerances. Doesn't fit in there. It's darn close, but it don't fit. It fits in there, no problem. So we know we got a failure here. Doesn't fit, but it's close. Also doesn't fit, but it's close. So again, this one right here is our lease guy. It's probably about 27 maybe, just guessing. So again, let's go ahead and repair that. While we're at it, we might as well do all four. Again, tighter is certainly better. If you don't change these washers out inside, all they're going to do is wear even further, and eventually you're going to have a problem. So as long as we're taking the time to rebuild it, we might as well build it right. The easiest way to get these pinion gears out of here, of course, we have to remove the pins, which are staked at both sides. Staked, in other words, pressed and flattened on the sides right here. Easiest way to do that, just take a short 5/16 inch bolt, put it on top of there, and of course move it over to your hydraulic press. I'm just going to use a 12-ton press and press it through. Once you get it started like this, move over to a bigger bolt, a longer one, and press it all the way through. Again, you don't want to start out with the longer bolt, because when you do that, it's going to go bing and hit you in the face. So start off with a shorter bolt. So just get it mounted onto our press. Take our short bolt, mount it onto there, and go ahead and press them off. And just pushing down. Should press pretty easily. You can get it started. Be careful your pins don't fall through. You get it pressed through. Go ahead and stop and then switch to the bigger screw. Go ahead and swap in your larger screw. Longer one. It's a good idea to keep a bucket or something under there so that when the pins come out of there, or when the pin itself comes out, the bearings don't go flying. So again, I'm just putting that underneath, as you can see here. And again, press away. And there you go. And we have caught the pin. Again, here's where it gets tricky. Release. Be careful on the release. Again, when you take the screw out, your bearings could go flying. They usually do. Do that on the bench. Again, I just took the whole assembly into my bucket. I'm going to take my assembly still in my bucket. And now here is when I'll remove that bolt. And you can see a couple screws or a couple needle bearings have already fallen out. And there goes a bunch more. Again, notice I'm working with this and it's facing down. It's not facing up, right? So that when I take this out, my bearings will fall straight down and they won't get stuck into there, for example. One other thing to note, once you get it apart and all your bearings fall out, the steel washer is touching the pinion and the copper is on top of it, facing the housing itself. Same thing on the flip side, although they've both fallen off. The steel faces the pinion and the copper faces the housing. Examining the condition of the washers, you can see that there's wear there. And again, these washers are what's wearing away. The copper one seems a little bit worn, but not too bad. And the pinion itself is fine. Again, examine the inside also. Make sure there's no excessive wear. Of course, examine the pin. She looks fine as well. No wear, no scratch marks. And the bearings themselves, make sure they're also in good condition. And for your reference, just like we saw on our rear planet, there are 19 needle bearings. And of course, once you get the first one pressed out, I like to do these in a set of 4. So as long as you're taking the time, you might as well go ahead and pull them all out and replace all the washers. Once you get all your pinions, needle bearings, washers outside of your front planetary, we're going to go ahead and clean up our front planetary housing. Again, we're going to be replacing those washers, and we're also going to press our pins back in, and then we're going to weld and stake the ends back in. So you want to make sure that this is nice and clean. Of course, transmission fluid is not a good mix when we're welding. Once you get it all nice and cleaned up, you're going to want to go ahead, replace those washers. Here's the kit of washers I'm using. It's part number K75905W. I just bought them on eBay. Very inexpensive. Again, it's a set of washers. I used the same ones when I replaced them on the rear planet, which was video 16, I believe. So again, pick yourself up a set of these, and let's go ahead and put this back together. When we start off putting these in, remember we pushed out from here. So you can see there's damage here. It's kind of hard to see, but first thing you want to do, of course, is take that to the grinder and make sure that this end is nice and smooth and there's no lip sitting up. And of course, you want to do the same thing here. Make sure that there's no lip on the inside or the outside so that we could push it through without scraping. I'll take it over to the grinder and get rid of that surface. Take the pin, we just got the edge off, and go ahead and apply some trans lube onto there. And then grab your pins. Mount them on there. Once you get a good bunch on there, take your pinion, go ahead and mount it on there. The rest of your pins in. Get them all in there, one last one. There you go. Once you get them all mounted on there, go ahead and take your pin out. That leaves you left with all the pins inside the pinion. Take one finger on one side, one on the other, and rotate in different directions. So this finger in this direction, this finger in this direction. What that's going to do is lock them in place. And even if they're locked in, you can see even if I drop it, they still hold in place. So that's pretty important. Next thing, find your pin, drive it into your hole. We can use the press, do that. Just want to drive it a little bit so that it's seating. Get it seated. Again, not all the way in, just enough so that we could take one of our bronze and one of our steel. Again, first the bronze, then the steel. Then we want to take our pinion, put your pinion onto there, line it up, and now we want to press the pin further through so that it's almost to the end. And again, go to your press and press it in. What you want to do is press it so that it's just about to the end. Just about to the end, as you can see. And what we want to do is set our washers into there. Set your steel one first. Again, steel goes next to the pinion. Get it onto there. And then set your bronze. Get your second set centered in there. Again, nice and centered through the hole. And then go ahead, press your pin the rest of the way down. Once you get them all pressed back in again, what we want to do is go ahead and weld these so that they don't come out. We'll go ahead and weld at these points right here on all four sides. Again, the purpose being so that the pins don't come back out. Be careful on this side, of course, because you'll have your bearing sitting up here. Go ahead again, we'll hit our pins with a quick weld. Get them to stay here, 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 and here. And they're certainly not beautiful, but they should work. Let's do a test on our new clearance. We'll take a 16. Just see if she'll fit in there. No chance. No chance. And she'll fit. Maybe a 17 or an 18 on this particular pinion. And maybe a 15, 14. So again, we're well within spec now. All is good. One last thing we want to do is set up our rear section end play while we have it apart on the bench. It's much easier to do it this way than to do it in the system. The first thing you want to do is take your output shaft assembly with your rear carrier gear. Go ahead and put it in there. Again, I'm using the rollerized assembly. You're probably not, so my assembly will be slightly different, but I'll let you know the same differences. Again, I'm just putting it into my stand. Already has the hole drilled for ease of use. Take your bearing assembly, black side facing up, drop it onto there. Next, we want to take our rear carrier assembly that we pre-assembled previously. Again, I'm using a roller assembly here. If I wasn't, I would take this washer, put it onto your rear assembly, like so, and then it goes down. But again, I'm using the rollerized carrier here, the ring gear. So I'm not going to put that washer there. Simply put it down, and again it should spin right in. There's the benefit of the roller assembly, of course, less friction. Next, we want to take our low reverse clutch assembly. We've pre-assembled that too, of course, and we want to align these splines with the splines right here in this housing. Go ahead and put it on. Again, find your alignment. Make sure that she's all the way down. And again, that should rotate in one direction only because of our sprag. Next, we want to install our input drum assembly that we previously assembled. Note my low reverse clutch. Again, I used a rollerized assembly. If I didn't, I'd want to install this washer onto the assembly here. Again, it simply fits right here with the little tab things go into the holes in the assembly. Like so. Again, I'm using a rollerized low reverse clutch assembly, so in my case that doesn't apply, but probably you're not. Go ahead and set that on there. Again, rotate it, get it to slide all the way down, and it should rotate nice once it's on there. Next, we want to install our front sun gear. Notice there's a groove that goes all the way around it. The groove goes down, right? This side's flat, this side's grooved. The groove goes down, spin it onto there. Then we have our bearing. The bearing side goes down, right? Where you have all your bearings. That goes down on top of our sun gear. Now we'll take our front planet assembly. Install that onto there. One thing to note when we're installing the front planet onto the rear shaft, notice there's a hole in the rear shaft that our lube passes through, as well as the hole in our front planet. What you want to do is get them both to line up when you're putting them on. Again, you might have to rotate and press at the same time to get it to line up. Once you get it down, you'll notice there's clearance up here, enough to get your ring in. And as you can see, we have them lined up. So again, output shaft and front planet. Line up those holes. You'll have oil coming out better. Now we'll take our bearing, black side facing up, right? There's your silver, there's your black, black side facing up, top of there. Now normally what you would do is put your ring gear on. Again, when we're going for the final assembly, we'll go ahead and do this, but just to check our end play, we don't need to install this. So again, no need to put that in right now. There are 9 different selective washers available. They fit onto here. This is the yellow one that I took out. And what we're looking for is, once we put our ring in here, we're looking for the gap between the bottom of this ring and the top of this selective washer. That's our rear end play. And we want it to be between. Again, tighter is certainly better. To get the right clearance, you'll probably have to use a different selective washer, be it thicker or thinner, depending on your application. And you may even have to use a shim. There's shims from a Chevy 12-bolt Pinion rear end. They're about 10 thick. That'll take up some of the gap if you can't get the selective that's perfect for your application. Those selectives are no longer made by GM, of course, anymore. There's a company, Tri-Component, that makes a nice little kit. It's part number K65403A, like Apple. And again, I just found them on eBay, but they're made by Tri-Component. And it's a set of various different selective washers and 3 shims. Now, I initially took off the yellow one. I'll just put that on there. The gap is obviously tremendous. Certainly more than 10 or 15. So I'm not going to bother installing that one. I'm going to use a thicker one. Again, coming out of my kit. Put that onto there. Now you can see my gap is much better. I find these snap ring pliers are the most useful. It's coming in there. Again, it's easy to do when you're on here, but later on when we're actually in the transmission, this snap ring is a pain in the butt to get at because you can't come from the side, you have to come from the top. And my snap ring's on there. Now again, if we had the ring gear on there, it would be quite challenging to measure that gap in between there to get at it at an angle. But without using that, it's much easier. Throw my gauge in there. That's a 13. It's tons of room. 22. Still tons of room. So obviously, I need to put a shim in there. Go ahead and take that ring off. I'll go ahead and add one of the shims. That should tighten it up a bit. Let's put our ring back on. Again, we'll check our clearance. $18 is a no can do. 15 goes in there. So it's looking like a 16 maybe currently. Yeah, 17's a little tight. Once again, we'll swap. I'll add another shim onto it. Two shims and the selective. Again, put your snap ring back on. Once again, we'll check the clearance. And 9 is too tight. 5 fits in there. 7's a bit too tight. So that looks like she's good for my application. Again, that kit of selectives is very important to get that to the right end play. Really important. Again, the 10 thou shims also. Again, Chevy 12 bolt rear end pinions. Those shims will work. They're 10,000th. You could buy a few of them, or you could buy the kit like we showed. The selectives themselves, again, there's 9 different ones. They range in size from 0.114, so 114 thousandths, all the way up to 175. That's 175 thousandths. So again, there's quite a variation. But really, to fine tune them, you really should try and get your shims. And again, try and get it as tight as possible without going, less than 2 or 3. So again, tighter is better. Again, this is the best method by far to get your rear section end play done. No need to do it in the transmission to keep taking things in and out. Do it before you get it set up.